Okay, welcome. This is chapter 29 in Wheelocks. We're going to be looking at the imperfect subjunctive. We introduced subjunctive last week in the form of present tense. Today we're going to be adding the imperfect tense, as well as looking at the subjunctive forms for the irregular verbs sum and possum, but we'll be looking at both present and imperfect for both of those irregular verbs. And then last week we added purpose clause. We looked at the uses of subjunctive mood. Specifically, we looked at the jussive, or jussive rather, jussive, hortatory, jussive, as well as the purpose clause. But today we'll be looking and adding the result clause. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. And let's see if we can't get us going here. Let's go ahead and move this up and out of the way. All right, let's hit play here. All right, so here it is, chapter 29. Let's take a look at this. If you remember, we looked at the characteristics of verbs. Last week we reviewed them. We've learned things over the last couple of years: voice, active and passive, mood, indicative, imperative, all six tenses: present, imperfect, future, perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. We've learned person, first, second, and third, as well as number, singular, and plural. And then last week we introduced a new mood. It was the subjunctive mood. And we looked at, again, a couple of different uses of subjunctive. The first one was the jussive or hortatory jussive, which is when it's used as a independent or main verb, independent clause, main verb. In a sentence, we translate it as like let us or let them do their homework or let them go. It's a command for basically first and third persons, and generally command for second person is used, conveyed by the imperative mood. So we looked at that, as well as the purpose clause. So let's take a look. This is a reminder of what indicative mood is. It's the mood that points things out, real action, has or has not happened. Imperative mood is the command, as I just said a minute ago, generally for second person. And then the subjunctive mood is the mood of potential, tentative, hypothetical, ideal, or unreal action. In the English, we use some auxiliary words like may or might, should, would, could, may have, would have, etc., to help convey this idea. Latin, however, does something a little different. It has a special form for the subjunctive mood. And we use, well, the form takes a vowel shift in the stem vowel of the main verb, or the main principal part there. So it shifts from whatever the main vowel is to a new vowel. And we use a mnemonic device to help us remember this shift. We use he beat a giant. So your book says we fear a liar, but I like he beat a giant better. And so our vowel is simply going to shift to this new vowel. Let's take a look in the indicative, of course, first conjugation verbs, like laudo had a long A, monao, second conjugation, had a long E, ago had a short E, third conjugation verbs, and then, of course, fourth and third IO have a long I. But we're going to shift to an E, an EA, an A, and an IA, respectively. And here's what it looks like. Lauda becomes laude, monet becomes monea, aga becomes aga, and audi and capi become audia and capia. So he beat a giant. And so we just took this vowel shift and added our endings, mst, mustus, int, and this is how we form the subjunctive in the present tense, okay? And there again, there's that mnemonic device. So here's what we're gonna do for the imperfect tense in the subjunctive mood. I'm gonna do active and passive voice. And this is really the simplest subjunctive to form. I really love it. You simply take the second principal part, which is the infinitive, and you add your endings, mst, mustus, int. So it's ladarem, ladares, ladaret, ladaremus, ladaretus, ladarent. It's pretty easy. And then in the passive voice, you simply add your aorist, ter, mer, mini, inter. And so you come away with ladarer, ladaroris, it's hard to say, ladareter, ladaramer, ladaramini, ladarenter. There you go. It's almost hard to say. But that's how you form the passive. It's just the infinitive plus the passive endings. And I'll quickly run through the second and third, etc. conjugations. Here's the active voice for monere. You just add your endings, mst, mustus, int. And for passive, again, you just simply add your aorist, ter, mer, mini, inter. Third conjugation paradigm verb, I go ageti. You take your ageti, you add your endings, mst, mustus, int. For the passive, again, infinitive plus your passive endings. Are, ter, mer, many, inter. For fourth conjugation and third IO rather, you have your adiri, MST, musticent, passive, are, ter, mer, many, inter, added to the adiri, the second principal part here, the infinitive. It's pretty simple. And then, of course, your third conjugation paradigm verb, capere. You got your capere plus your MST, musticent, in the active voice. And for the passive, to your capere, you add your are, ter, mer, many, inter. It's pretty simple. I love subjunctive imperfect, and it's really easy to see. You see an infinitive plus endings. It's really pretty straightforward that this is the subjunctive imperfect, either active or passive, depending on the ending that you have. So that's pretty cool here. I'm going to introduce to you, however, new right now, your sum and possum in the subjunctive mood. These are irregular verbs. You learned them a long time ago. I'll remind you what it looks like in the indicative mood. In the active voice here it is. Sum esse fui futurum. And if you remember the present tense, it's simply sum esse sunt. And the imperfect was arama rasarat, arama sarata sarant. And for possum, you're just going to basically add a POS or POT to this present tense form. It's possum, possi, potui. And you end up with possum, potes, potes, possumus, potestis, possunt, and poteram, poteras, poterat, poteramus, poteratus, poterant in the imperfect. So those you've already learned. Active voice, irregular, indicative mood. We're going to introduce to you now the subjunctive mood for these irregular verbs. And here's what it looks like. It's a new form in the present tense for sum, but it's really easy. It's sim, sis, sit, simus, situs, sint. I like that one. Sim, sis, sit, simus, situs, sint. Say it out loud. Sim, sis, sit, simus, situs, sint. Say it 5 times. Sim, sis, sit, simus, situs, sint. 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 Sim, sis, sit, sim, sis, sit, simus, situs, sint. It's kind of hard to say, but just memorize that. It's a pretty cool form, and it's easy to do. Imperfect in the subjunctive uses the same format as what we just learned a few minutes ago on how to do subjunctive imperfect. You take the infinitive, the second principal part. Here it's esse, and you add your endings, mst, musticent, and you end up with sm, assess, asset, assemus, assetus, assent. So that is the standard form for forming the subjunctive imperfect. And then possum, we're just going to add a POS to the sim, sis, sit, right? And we end up with possum, possis, possit, possimus, possitus, possint. Pretty easy. And then again, your subjunctive imperfect, you take the infinitive, here it's posse, and you add your endings, mst, musticent, and you end up with possem, possess, posset, possemus, possetus, possent. And so these are the irregular form verbs, sum and possum, in the subjunctive mood. So work on this. I'm going to go ahead and stop this video. I'll do a second video for the second part. Go ahead and read your text on page 236 and 237, and just read through that and work on your homework for this tonight. We'll see you on the next video.